Assalamu alaikum. Hope you guys are fine. This is Dr. Maria Anwar. Today we're going to study about the placenta and its functions. Up till now, you guys have studied about the blastocyst. Blastocyst consists of an outer layer of the cells which are known as the trophoblasts. It is further divided into two types of cells, cytotrophoblast and the syncytial trophoblast. Then there is an inner cell mass, and then they have the central fluid filled cavity. Implantation occurs usually at the 7th day of the ovulation, and the proteolytic enzyme secreted by the trophoblastic cells allow the blastocyst to bury itself in the endometrium. While at the same time, under the influence of progesterone hormone, it causes the cells of the endometrium to swell up and they become secretory in the nature, and they start storing nutrients like lipid, glycogens and some minerals. So they start giving nutrition to the conceptus, and these cells of the endometrium are known as the decidual cells, or we call them at the decidua. Till the first week of the implantation, it usually takes the conceptus takes in nutrition solely from the decidua, though later on from the 16th day to onwards they start taking nutrition from another structure which is known as the placenta, though till 8th week decidua keeps on providing nutrition to the conceptus. Now the placenta is formed. The placenta is basically formed with the adjacent uterine endometrial cells and the trophoblastic cells which are adjacent to the endometrium, and the nearby blastocyst cells. So they form the placenta. Basically the trophoblastic cell, they start invading and they start migrating towards the endometrium, and they start growing and they proliferating in the endometrium. So this is how our structure is formed. As you can see, these are the adjacent cells of the blastocyst. These are the trophoblastic cells which are invaginating in the endometrium. Now they form a cord-like structure which will eventually form into the umbilical cord, and in these cord-like structures of the trophoblastic cells, some blood vessel cell, they start proliferating and they start producing. They eventually will form the umbilical arteries and the umbilical vein. Now there is a microscopic picture. This is the endometrium in which the conceptus has been implanted, and at the edges of there are the trophoblastic cells. Now these trophoblastic cells, when they start invaginating or growing into the endometrium, they make some growths, or they make some cavities which are known as the villi. This is the place where the diffusion takes place. Now this graph, it basically shows that till 8th week, the nutrition of the conceptus, it is from the trophoblastic nutrition. After that it starts declining, and in the same hand the placental nutrition, they start increasing, though at the start the placenta is usually very thick and its surface area is low, though with the passage of time the placenta starts staining and in surface area increasing, so the full blown placenta is formed and the diffusion from the placenta occurs. Now this is the final picture of the placenta. Here you can see this is the maternal end and this is the fetal end. Here you can see the trophoblastic cells from the fetal side, they grow and they form the umbilical cord, and in the umbilical cord the vessels are formed which are known as umbilical arteries and umbilical vein. 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. Now they basically invaginates, and the trophoblastic cells, they form a structure which are known as the villus. This is one villus and this is another villus, so we call them as the villi. So the blood, it enters from the umbilical arteries, then into the capillaries, and there is a diffusion occurs, and then it goes back into the vein and then back to the baby. On the other side, in the endometrium, this is the wall of the endometrium. It is supplied by the maternal blood vessel. In this case, these are the uterine arteries through which the blood enters into the placenta, and in the uterine arteries, here it will enter into the sinuses. We guys have already studied about the sinuses in the physiology and anatomy of the vessels. and then there is a transport of the nutrition, and also the exchange of the gases, and also the exchange of the excretory products from the fetal circulation to the maternal circulation. Then it will enter into back into the uterine veins and back to the mother's blood. Now there is a barrier which is known as the placental barrier, which is formed by the epithelial cells of the villus and the endothelium of the fetal vessels. So this barrier is known as the placental barriers. Here you can see this is where the maternal blood is here, this is the arterial end, this is the venous end, and at this place in the villi there are the vessels which are known as the fetal vessels, and in this there is a fetal blood. Though there is a diffusion through from mother to the fetus and the fetus to the mother accordingly, but they don't exactly mix with each other. It is because of this placental barrier which is present here. So this is the final structure of the placenta. So two umbilical arteries and one umbilical veins are present in the umbilical cord. A rope-like structure is formed that connects the fetus to the placenta. A layer of epithelial cell of villi and the layer of endothelial cell in the fetal capillaries separate maternal and fetal blood. There is exchange of material, but there is no actual mixing. Now about the placental permeability, as I have already mentioned that previously its surface area is low, but as it develops into a full-blown placenta, its surface area increases and the thinning of the membrane takes place. Now the transport occurs only through the diffusion, either it is simple diffusion or the facilitated diffusion. There is only 20 millimeter mercury pressure difference between the maternal and fetal circulation, 50 and 30, so the net is 20 millimeter mercury difference. Though even despite this very low difference in the concentration of partial pressure of oxygen or across the membrane, there is a still very effective transport of oxygen. So how is this effective transport of oxygen takes place through the placenta? There are three basically characteristics. One is the fetal hemoglobin. As we have already discussed, the adult hemoglobin, it has 2 alpha and 2 beta chains, but the fetal hemoglobins has 2 alpha and 2 gamma chains, and the 2 gamma chains, they have more affinity for hemoglobin has more affinity for oxygen as compared to the adult hemoglobin. So in this way it causes the hemoglobin oxygen dissociation curve shifts towards the left. Another is the hemoglobin concentration in the fetal circulation is 50 times greater than that of the mother. Obviously more hemoglobin is present, it will cause more transport of the oxygen. Third is the double Bohr effect. We have discussed about the Bohr effect in the respiration. I repeated, whenever there is less partial pressure of carbon dioxide, the affinity of oxygen with hemoglobin increases. So what happens in the placental circulation, the carbon dioxide which is present in the fetal circulation, which is producing acidity, the carbon dioxide will diffuse from the fetal circulation towards the maternal circulation. So the hemoglobin or the blood of the fetal circulation will be more alkaline or less acidic. So there will be more affinity of hemoglobin towards the oxygen. On the other hand, towards the maternal side has its own carbon dioxide plus the carbon dioxide of the fetal circulation, so it will increase the acidity or it will decrease the pH in the maternal blood. So it will cause less affinity of hemoglobin towards the oxygen. So these two effects, alkalinity in the fetal circulation and acidity in the maternal circulation, it will causes the delivery of oxygen from the maternal circulation to the fetal circulation, or a binding or more affinity of oxygen towards the fetal hemoglobin. So this is known as the double Bohr effect. Due to all these three effects, there is a very effective transport of oxygen across the membrane. Here you can see hemoglobin oxygen dissociation curve, which shifts toward the left in case of fetal circulation. Now, as I've already mentioned, the transport occurs through the diffusion. For example, the gases, they are soluble like oxygen and carbon dioxide. They passes through the lipid soluble membrane. There are some lipid soluble substances like fatty acid. They can also transport through the lipid soluble membrane. Glucose needs facilitated diffusion. This is how it's transport. And again, some other ions, they also transport through the diffusion. Another function of the placenta is the excretion, which is the waste product, which are the urea, uric acid and creatinine. They are also excreted through the placenta. Now there are different hormones which are produced by the placenta. For these are the human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone, estrogen, progesterone and human chorionic somatotropin. We will discuss them one by one. First is the HCG or human chronic gonadotrophin hormone, which is secreted by syncytial trophoblasts. I have already mentioned the trophoblast is divided into the two layers, but this cytome and other is the syncytial trophoblast. So it is formed by the syncytial trophoblast, secreted by syncytial trophoblast. 8 to 9 days after ovulation, HCG can be measured in the blood. Its level reaches maximum 10 to 12 weeks and decreases back to lower value in 16 to 20 weeks. Now, what are the function of this HCG? Number one, it causes the persistence of the corpus luteum. So basically it prevents the menstruation. So it makes the corpus luteum of pregnancy. It also causes the secretion of estrogen and progesterone from the corpus luteum, and it prevents the menstruation. The corpus luteum involutes in the 4 months of the gestation, and removal of corpus luteum before 7 to 12 weeks of pregnancy leads to the abortion. In male testes, it acts as an interstitial cell stimulating factor, resulting in a testosterone production. Here you guys can see the human chorionic gonadotropin release. As you guys can see, its release starts from the 4th week of the pregnancy and till usually around 20 weeks or 18 weeks of pregnancy, then it starts declining. On the other hand, the production of estrogen and progesterone, which is less at the start of the pregnancy, they start increasing. Another hormone is the estrogen. It is also produced by the syncytial trophoblastic cell, though it is not synthesized in ovarian cells, synthesized from the androgenic steroid compounds, which are the dihydroepiandrosterone and hydroxydihydroepiandrosterone, and it forms into estradiol, estrone and estriol. Now, what are its function? It causes the enlargement of the female uterus, female breast, external genital organ, and it relaxes the pelvic ligaments, and the pubic symphysis becomes elastic, which will basically help during the labor and the delivery of the baby. Another hormone produced by the placenta is known as the progesterone. As I've already mentioned, it causes the development of the decidual cells, which provides the nutrition before the placenta starts full bloom functioning. And it also causes the decreases contractility of the pregnant uterus. It basically inhibits the contractility of the pregnant uterus to avoid a miscarriage or abortion. Now, even before implantation, it provides nutrition to the developing conceptus by increasing the secretion of fallopian tubes and the uterus. Now, the breast also causes the breast preparation for the lactation. Human chorionic somatotropin hormone, a large amount of this hormone is secreted, though its function is not very clear. But it causes the partial development of mother's breast, and it prepares the breast for the lactation. And also it has a weak effect like growth hormone. On the other hand, it decreases insulin sensitivity and glucose usage by the mother. So the more glucose is available for the baby to be used. It also causes the mobilization of the fat stores of the mothers, providing alternative source of energy utilization. So mother has more other source of energies. Thank you for listening this lecture. Hope you guys understand. Allah Hafiz.